I don't know what the ratio is of the blend that's in it. Hence proprietary, right? So there's probably maybe 2 people in the whole company, Dr. Clinton, the CEO, and Dr. Meisner are probably the only 2 that actually know the ratios of that. But it is that particular blend that's really geared towards each stage of life to basically help with symptomology from an 84% success rate, which is really fantastic in the nutraceutical world. Some other Maca products, about a 60% success rate. On average, I forget the exact numbers, but I want to say on average, the average drug is around a 20% to 30% success rate, and I might be generous with that, depending on the drug. So to compare from a standpoint of just effectiveness, is it going to work 100% for everybody? No, nothing does, right? I mean, there's always going to be some little quirks, but an 84% success rate is quite significant. We did look, and this is a really, really important piece when it comes to feminescence, is the fact that it did have an impact on hormone levels. So this is not just about covering up the symptoms. It's not what it's about. It's really impacting hormone levels. So for instance, in our studies, which I'll talk a little bit about with postmenopausal women, where estradiol levels are typically low, that's what starts to decrease in perimenopause and into menopause, an increase in estradiol was seen. This helps to create a little bit more natural balance so you're not having symptomology. So one of the really nice things about this is the fact that at this point, anyway, at this moment in time, this is the only natural product that actually has an impact on female hormones, not just the symptoms. You get the symptom relief as well, but you're actually influencing your hormones. So this is something, if you were to do a lab, you would see fluctuations and changes take place in your hormone levels. We did also look, and I'll go, yes. Good question. No, so I don't know if everybody heard that, but wondering about the increase of certain cancers, for instance, like a breast cancer. One of the neat things, remember, just going back to the adaptogenic aspect, so we did see after actually a 12-week time period that hormones, once they're balanced, plateau and maintain the balance. So we don't run the risk of elevating hormones above what's normal, which is really important for people who are concerned about that.
So that was at
That was in our clinical trials. Yep. Yeah. We did also look at things like bone density and heart health, which I'll go into in just a little bit, because we know the connections with bone and heart, as well as mental health when it comes to hormones. So we've just a review in terms of who's talking about us. Delicious Living, we did in 2012, but it also just in the beginning of this year won their best female product, which we were really happy to hear. A lot of talk about in various books. The most recent, if anybody's picked up Kelly Brogan's book, The Mind of Your Own, she speaks of feminescence in that. So there's a lot of good stuff going on out there. Anybody want to take a guess at how pretty, well, you can see how pretty this is. Anybody want to take a guess at what that is? Come on, somebody yell out something. I need a water break. What? Is it what? Is it maca? No.
Estrogen, hormones?
It does look like a butterfly. It does look like feathers. Petals.
Your hormones.
Is
Is that your pituitary gland spitting out hormones?
I think I heard it.
Is it your pituitary gland spitting out your hormones? Is that estrogen?
You're on the right path.
It looks like a hormone.
This is what estrogen looks like when it's magnified.
Mm-hmm.
Isn't that cool?
Yeah.
I mean, look how pretty that is. And we like villainize estrogen, right? It's so pretty. It is. That's right. We are pretty. This is what makes us pretty, because it's pretty. Right. Oh boy. You will after everyone's using feminescence. You'll see the beauty come out. But yeah, that's what estrogen looks like. Very cool. So guess what? You see it within packaging. We did that specifically. Look at your butterfly. That's kind of what estrogen looks like. Okay? What was that? Yeah, kind of. Well, now that you know that that's what it is, I mean, you didn't know before, it just looked like butterfly before, but now you see how pretty it is. So we're going to talk about each of there's 3 different products for women, and it's geared towards stage of life. So Feminescence Maca Harmony is for your reproductive years, Feminescence Maca Life is for perimenopause, and Feminescence Maca Pause is for your postmenopausal women. So usually it's kind of like, well, where am I? Where do I fall? Like, okay, a 25-year-old knows that, hey, I'm still here in the reproductive age. But let's say you're 43. Are you in reproductive or are you perimenopausal?
Perimenopausal.
Still be reproductive.
It's geriatric though, it's not safe.
Don't know. Really? Don't really know. The average age of perimenopause is 42, but somebody said, what if you want to have a baby at 45? Well, if you want to have a baby at 45, we need to support you like you're ready to have a baby, right? Which would then be Feminescence Maca Harmony. So some of it is looking at what your ultimate goals are, what you're experiencing, and choosing then the right product. Not the only, reproductive at younger ages is really clear. And then the Feminescence Maca Pause is also really clear because menopause is defined as 12 consecutive months without a cycle. Many people are not aware of this. A lot of times we use the term of going through menopause. Well, that just kind of means you're probably in perimenopause, getting ready for that. But once you've been 12 consecutive months without a cycle, that is the medical definition of menopause, with one exception. If you have a hysterectomy, you're immediately placed into menopause. Okay? In which case then the Feminescence Maca Pause is still the right product. So this is not age dependent. We have some averages, but it really is looking at what stage of life are you in. And just so you know, in perimenopause in particular, because this kind of creates the most confusion for women, it's a period of time. 7 to 10 years, 7 to 12 years. It's a stage of life. The key is that you don't have to be suffering through that stage of life, which many women do unnecessarily, for sure.
Don't bite me.
So let's talk about Feminescence Maca Harmony first, which is your reproductive years. And first, just to illustrate what is normal. Many people are not aware of what is normal for hormone fluctuation. This is a normal 28-day cycle. Okay, so just to illustrate, up here we have what's going on in the uterus. Here we have your ovaries and the release of the egg. And here are your hormone levels. You can see the red is your estrogen, blue is progesterone. Do they look like they're balanced? No. Not necessarily, right? But this is what normal balance is. Right? So when somebody says my hormones aren't balanced, well, you're right. They're not really. They're not meant to stay static. They are meant to be moving throughout the 28-day cycle to support what's truly going on in the body. So what you see here, and this corresponds with all 3 correspond together. So we're talking day 1, well, day 0, which never makes any sense to me. It's really day 1 of the menstrual cycle, is the first day of bleeding. Okay, so what do you see? What's happening? Your uterine lining is breaking down. This is the shedding of the lining, which is causing the bleeding. Okay, so around day 5, 3 to 5 days is quite normal. And you see estrogen is here. What happens is the uterine lining starts to thicken back up again. Estrogen's kind of going along with that. Day 14, what happens here is ovulation around day 14. Ovulation when the egg is released from the ovary, and that happens because there's this massive spike in estrogen. That's normal. That should be happening then to help release the egg from the ovary. And then it drops back down after ovulation, and you see how progesterone then picks up, and then it remains higher than it was, of course, the first about 14 days of the cycle. And progesterone is there to help maintain the integrity of the uterine wall so the egg can actually fertilize and implant into the uterus. This is normal. Most people don't know this. They have no clue about this. And there can be many reasons that this is off. Some people like to use the term estrogen dominance. Anybody get that one? Hear that? No? Estrogen dominance, maybe. You might be estrogen dominant, but you might just be progesterone deficient. making you appear as if you have too much estrogen, right? But then it's also, what day are we looking at? If you ever have testing done of your hormones and you don't know what day of your cycle you had it done, kind of useless. If you had it day 14, I would expect your estrogen to be higher. That's normal, right? So just looking at, this is what's normal, and this is what we want to create to have a normal balance. What happens when you're not in balance? Where do you want me to start? Right? Anybody have PMS? Bloating, headache, cramps, moodiness, change in sleep, change in bowel habits. I mean, we could go on and on and on, right? PCOS is an imbalance. Fertility concerns, an imbalance. Amenorrhea, I don't know, well, I have theories, but that's a whole other class. There's a lot of reasons for amenorrhea at this point, but a lot of women are really walking around with this now. Yeah, well, the excess exercise for sure is a problem for some women. The elites, the training, the people, a lot of the athletes that don't get their cycles as a result. But there's so many reasons for this, and ultimately what we want to get back to is this normal balance. So that's where Feminescence Maca Harmony is coming into play for women in their reproductive years. Now all of the Feminescence use Maca GO, that proprietary blend that I talked about. However, it also contains Maca phenotypes that are specific for the healthy menstrual cycle and healthy egg quality. So again, very important for those women who are in that stage of life. Feminescence Maca Life, your perimenopausal women. Again, when is this happening? Hard to say exactly. But some defining pieces that may present that you never saw before would be something like a little hot flash going on. Maybe some night sweats along with it. Never had those before. Maybe you have some change in libido, change in sleep patterns. Your cycle becomes irregular. So maybe it went from every 28 days to every 24, every 21. Maybe it was, used to be 3 days, now it's 5. Used to be 5 days, now it's 2. Used to be really heavy, now it's light. Used to be light, now it's heavy. Like all kinds of fluctuations go on during this time frame of life. And keep in mind that stage of life is really, it's just that, it's a stage. It can go on for many years, but the key here is that there's an imbalance that's taking place that needs to be addressed. So Feminescence Maca Life is designed for that. We did independent studies on Feminescence Maca Life as well, looking at some of those key symptoms that women are having in terms of hot flashes, night sweats, changes in libido, those things that I spoke about. And between a 74 and 82% reduction in symptoms, which again is pretty substantial. And again, helping to support things like bone and heart health, which I am getting to that, I promise. Those are some of the information from our clinical trials, just looking at things like estradiol. We did see reductions in body weight. I always hesitate to put this up. But, yes, you can have a reduction in body weight when it is hormonally related. Okay, a lot of women in perimenopause tend to see, hey, I'm gaining some weight, I'm having trouble losing it. It could be from hormones, but it can be from other things too. So you never want to dismiss that. This is not a weight loss product. And I don't promote it as a weight loss product, but when your hormones are balanced, part of what the body is always trying to do is balance everything, which includes weight as well. So we did see weight loss, and it was typically after 2 to 3 months of use that we did see that take place. Feminescence Maca Pause. This is your postmenopausal women. This again too relates to anybody who's had a hysterectomy because they've been surgically placed into menopause. And this just kind of sums it up. I bet you fall into one of those, maybe, right? Or many, depending on the severity, right? So a lot of symptoms that happen postmenopausally are very similar to that of perimenopause, which I think is why women tend to feel like I'm going through menopause. Right? The symptoms are the same. The defining factor is the menstrual cycle. Perimenopause, you're still having a cycle, no matter how erratic and irrational it might be at times, versus menopause, you're done. That's what it is, menopause. The menses has paused. it stops. So that's really the defining piece is the cycle, but the symptoms definitely can be the same. Again, this is looking at from the research standpoint. We looked at a 3, 4, and 8 month duration. And this is where I said we saw that plateau. Once hormones balanced, we saw the plateauing effect. So it basically helped to maintain balance. Again, just to go back to the basics of how an adaptogenic, substance or herb works, is that's what it's about, is maintaining that balance. Definitely we have a lot of various publications that this is seen in. The biggest one is it's all made available on PubMed. So anybody can go on PubMed and search it, including all of the doctors out there, which it doesn't happen too often, but if anybody wants to know, it's there. Maca GO is what you'd be looking for on PubMed. And again, some of the other results, the feminescence in the purple, seeing an increase in your estradiol level, decreases in FSH level. This is typically the one marker that a lot of physicians will run to see or to classify if you're in menopause along with the cycle, is that there's this increase in FSH. But again, this is about working with the body. So we're not trying to make somebody who's in menopause be like they're 20 again in their reproductive years. That's not natural, right? But we just want to support a more balanced effort so you don't have all of these symptoms that can be presenting as a result. We did also measure all the symptoms, again, something called the Cooperman menopausal index, which is where we saw the 84% reduction in symptoms. And this basically is a very lengthy questionnaire that covers just about all of the hundreds of symptoms that can present from a hormonal imbalance. And you don't have to have hot flashes to be perimenopausal or postmenopausal. That's one symptom. You may not get night sweats. You may not get symptoms at all. When you don't have symptoms at all, it means it's an illness. And anybody ever go through, depending on your age group, if you're in the reproductive years and you get your cycle and you're like, oh man, it's here. Anybody? No? That's how it's supposed to be. Right? You shouldn't be like, oh, crazy, moody, where's the chocolate? I can't stand you. Give me just something, get out of my hair. No. You should basically wake up and go, oh, it's here. Okay. No indication unless you have a calendar. Menopause. You're not supposed to get hot flashes and night sweats and low libido and crazy changes in sleep. It's a symptom of an imbalance. It's the body really trying to say, hey, something's not right. Right? And there are, I don't want to discourage you with this. Don't want to discourage you, but there are women who just transition very beautifully and never have an issue. And I know you probably want to just punch them all, but that's the truth. What was that? Yeah. Yeah, I mean, that's the truth. When it's balanced, you don't present with symptoms. So, we did, as I mentioned, looked at some of the cardiovascular markers. Because remember that slide I showed you where cholesterol was associated? Right? So we looked at cholesterol because what's going on? What impact can we have on this, knowing that hormones are balanced? So we saw increases in HDL, which is commonly called your good cholesterol, and decreases in LDL levels. So this can be protective from the heart. Estrogen is really cardioprotective, which is why women tend to see increases in cardiovascular disease in their peri and postmenopausal years. It doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to just drop dead of a heart attack. It just means your hormones change. Right? So looking at those two levels, we also looked again at the body weight and triglyceride levels. Triglycerides also decreasing over the 3-month time period. So it's that interconnectedness, right? It's that web of how the body is all interconnected and not these individual symptoms. It's the body all working together. We did also look at mental health, and this was more from a standpoint of symptomology. We do know the effects that basically they're called sometimes neurohormones, but they're neurotransmitters and hormone connection. There is some thought even that PMS might be associated with serotonin deficiency. Right? Serotonin is very calming, and so when you become a raging lunatic, it might be that you don't have enough serotonin, which is a neurotransmitter. So we did look, and just to observe the fact that we know hormones and neurotransmitters have a connection again. It's not these independent systems. The body's all working together. It's getting the message from the brain and how to make hormones. So looking at things like healthy cortisol levels, which is that stress piece that we talked about earlier. And this is where we see really having an improvement on mood and sleep issues when hormones are balanced. Because that can be where that connection is and why you might feel like you're, a little off the deep end, super emotional, not sleeping. And this is where that hormonal connection can be. We also looked at bone health. Estrogen and progesterone play a role in how your body makes bones. Most people may or may not be aware of this, but again, women tend to see a decrease in bone density postmenopausally because of the connection that estrogen and progesterone play in the creation or the remodeling of bones. So estrogen has to do with reducing what's known as osteoclast cells. So progesterone helps to increase with osteoblast cells. Basically, really easy way to remember this. Osteoblasts are your building cells. Osteoclasts, think of like a claw, it's breaking it down. Right? The difference, or the key here, is that normally the body has a normal breakdown build, so it stays nice and balanced. When estrogen starts to decrease, progesterone starts to decrease, that balance also becomes compromised, right? So bone integrity starts to be compromised at that point. So keeping estrogen, progesterone in healthy levels definitely can have an impact on bone health. We did measure that bone density through the T-scores and did see mild improvements with that. They were not highly statistically significant, so not on the really high end when it comes to from a research standpoint. But we also know, as just brought out earlier before I started, the fact that there's other components to bone, right? So hormones is one aspect, but what about the nutrients? What about your calcium and your D and your K and your strength exercise, keep the bones moving, and things of that nature? All of that is also still going to play a role, so it's the complete picture. We did also measure serum iron levels. For a lot of women, changes in hair, skin, nails can be associated to low iron levels. We saw an increase in iron levels, which then can contribute, again, hair and skin and nails, also there's a lot of components to it. So it can be iron, it can be diet, it can be thyroid function that might impair it, essential fatty acids, things of that nature, but knowing we did look at iron, seeing an increase, so we do see improvements in hair, skin, and nails quite commonly with hormones balanced out. So just kind of a recap. Your feminescence maca harmony for those reproductive years, women with PCOS, PMS, fertility concerns, irregular cycles. Your perimenopause women, feminescence maca life, with the big fluctuations. These are your hormones, they are fluctuating, they're kind of all crazy all over the place. Starting to see some of those common symptoms of hot flashes, night sweats, changes in mood, libido, sleep. And then your feminescence maca pause for your postmenopausal women or women who have had hysterectomies, to help support all of the various symptoms that can take place, as I mentioned, with perimenopause. So, before I move into men, because I think I'm doing pretty good on time, any particular questions? I'll give it just a couple minutes. Whoever wants to go first. I'm not today. The product and the hormones, yes. Yes. Good question. Yep. So good question. The question is, how long do you need to do it before you see something? So pretty much in about a 3-week time period, most women will see improvements in mood and energy. And then depending on severity, between a 1 and 4 month time period for the remaining symptoms. I know that's a big variation, but everybody's level of imbalance is also different. Hot flashes, we see improvements in 2 days to 6 weeks. Again, when someone's going through it, that's a huge variation, but some women get it right away and others it just takes more time to restore. Any what? Well, if there's no improvement and they've been working with us, after 8 weeks, we will give them a full refund. Yep. I am limited in that. I mean, there's obviously, I mean, I can help to a certain degree, but I'm not treating them. So I'm limited in what I can offer. I mean, we know, you know, what we expect from the product, and that's what we're there to help with as part of the medical team. But I'm not your treating physician or practitioner, so there's limitations. What was that? Absolutely. So there's many factors to this. We do provide guidance on food and exercise, and in some cases other supplementation or nutrients. But there's a fine line because I'm not your treating physician, so I'm limited in what I can offer. A lot of times when it comes to if you're not exactly getting what you wanted out of it, sometimes there's dosing issues. Inconsistency in dosing will really create some unwanted or unpredictable effects from what I've seen. So being very consistent to support your hormones on a daily basis is important. Sometimes even too with medications, if you're taking it at the same time as certain medications that shouldn't be done, that can create some things that would cause it not to work properly. The beauty with that, and I'm just jumping a little ahead, we have a full medical team to help support that.
I mean, the reason I asked, one of your slides had all the various enzymes that are involved in hormone metabolization, hydroxylation, and glucuronidation, and what have you.
Yep.
And I thought you were going to talk about that.
I would love to talk about that, but that definitely not, I mean, that's a little bit of an intensive biochemistry that gets into that, and, you know, we've got to advertise that as a class, if that's the direction we're going in.
I guess ultimately there are certain genetics that people have.
Always.
This product may not work, but some people.
Just so you know, just so I clarify, I'm not saying this is 100% for anybody, by any means. We have 84% success rate, which is really fantastic in the natural world. I'm not saying that this is going to work 100% for everybody, but as a part of the medical team, we're there to help to get you through to make sure. And if you've done everything that we suggested and in 8 weeks it didn't work, then we will give you a refund, which is pretty substantial. Yeah.
I know I'm the salesperson here, but I have to say I have never heard more enthusiastic response on a male product that's for overall vitality and health than that. I mean, they are raving about it.
About Revolution.
Yeah,
Okay, we
yeah.
haven't even got to that, so thanks.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, yeah. We recommend very minimal, 4 months, ideal 4 to 8 months. But no, you don't have to stop, it's about maintenance. So it's definitely changing the dose to help maintain levels where they are. Yep, yep, yep. It does. We definitely make recommendations first and foremost. You always take Feminescence away from any other prescription medication, at least an hour away from it. And then I always make sure that you monitor. So if it's for cholesterol, continue to monitor so adjustments can be made if needed. Blood pressure medication, same thing. We see reductions in blood pressure over time, so you want to make sure that you're monitoring so adjustments can be made. Yeah, but always an hour away from medication. It's not all, but it's a nice blend just to be sure. Did you have another question? So the question is perimenopause and how long that is. It's somewhere between like 7 to 12 years. It's just a stage of life. It's just that transition phase from reproduction into menopause. So it's just a stage of life. Do you suffer with symptoms that whole time? I hope not. Not after today anyway, right? A lot of women do and have unnecessarily, and it is because of the fluctuation. Oh, and that's common. Yeah, no, it's going to fluctuate a lot during perimenopause, so whatever it was 2 years ago, 1 year ago, 6 months ago, may not be the same today. Yeah, so that's why you want to balance. Have you guys saw somebody back there?
What about the postmenopausal weight gain?
Yeah. So there's a hormonal connection for sure, because everything starts to slow down. So by default, your metabolism is slowing down, just by aging, period. Right? I mean, our metabolism at 20 is not the same as at 40. So there's a natural progression there. Personally, I also find that there's an element of, if we go back to that whole HPA, TG axis, right? So over time, especially, and I'm not saying this doesn't apply to men, but for women in particular, you have all these years of, I am mom, I am wife, I am working, I am taking care of the house, I am doing, I have this, I'm stressed, I'm not sleeping, you know, and all of those things. And eventually the body kind of just says, you know what? I'm done. I'm done with you, and I need to send some stronger messages to you to wake up, right? So there are things like weight gain and things like that can take place. It's just your body trying to scream to you that it needs some attention.
Does it work for that symptom?
Well,
The weight
as I
gain?
said, so we saw weight loss,
Right.
right? It's not a weight loss supplement. We saw weight loss when it's associated to imbalanced hormones. But you've got to look at the whole picture. If you're going to take feminescence and do nothing else, chances are you're not going to see a reduction in weight. There's got to be proper food in there. There's got to be proper exercise, sleep, etc.
But it did address cortisol.
Correct. Yeah. And again, depending on level of adrenal fatigue, additional adrenal support can still very much be needed. I think I saw somebody else. No? Yeah.
What about menopause beyond that period of time?
Beyond what period of time? Menopause?
Postmenopause.
Postmenopause is it. That's the last stage of the woman's life.
And what focus need to be addressed for hormonal balance?
I'm sorry, say that one more time.
What do you need to do for hormonal balance when you're, past that period?
But so postmenopause or menopause is just another stage of life. So you address it whether you're 1 year in or 20 years into that stage of life, is addressing that hormonal imbalance for that stage of life. Just like with Harmony, whether you're 20 years old and need reproductive support or you're 40 years old and need it. So it's just that stage, and everybody varies. I can tell you, I have talked to some very lovely women who call at 80-something years old because they want to have a higher libido. And I love it because that's what's normal, right? So they're well into menopause, and they're definitely concerned about still maintaining what is considered normal. So let's talk about men for a few minutes. So Revolution Montilibrium is our male product. And despite what a lot of people think, women, are you happy to hear that men have menopause as well? It's often called andropause, right? So there is a normal fluctuation for men too. There's going to be a normal decline for men as well. So while this is primarily focusing on those men who are having decreases in hormone levels, so 40 and beyond, we do have application for Revolution in their 20s all the way through. Excuse me, essentially what will happen is the dosing changes. So if somebody's in their 20s, typically hormone levels, testosterone levels are pretty steady, pretty high. Which is normal, but that's not always the case. So it really depends on what's going on with the man